いや、バカだな。なんか、やることがね、なんか、バカっていうかなんか
Welcome to the Lazy Fluency podcast, where we have casual conversations switching between English and Japanese so that you can learn from and with us along the way. I'm Joey.
And I'm Miami.
And the topic of the day is culture wars. But before we get into that, make sure to like, subscribe, follow, and/or drop a review on whatever platform you're listening on. We appreciate the support. And with that out of the way, culture wars. Culture wars have become an ever-present part of American culture. But how does Japan view these culture wars? More specifically, how does Aimi view these culture wars? Because we can't speak to Japan in general. Aimi, have you heard of the term culture wars? I know I told you that's going to be the topic of the episode, but had you heard of the term before?
まあ直訳するって何？文化戦争っていうの？
文化戦争。
文化戦争。
Yeah.
聞かないね。カルチャーは聞かないね。ってなわけで聞きません。
Yeah, so us to give maybe more information to culture wars. Culture wars are when a part of your culture kind of gets wrapped into politics to be like partisan. So if a specific part of culture becomes something that's associated with one party in your country. In the US, there's basically two parties. There are other parties, but there's basically two parties that are relevant and everything else isn't relevant. And they're both it depends who you're talking to. Realistically speaking, and this is a whole separate conversation, they're not that different from each other, but in kind of the culture idea, they're supposed to be like good and evil, and which one's good and evil is depending on which party you're on. Are you aware of, I'm assuming you have some cursory understanding of like American politics, just to the extent of knowing like big figures like Trump, or like maybe Obama or something like that.
Obama.
Is that correct?
人。今の人。バイデン。
Biden? Okay, I actually didn't think you would know Joe Biden. I literally
バイデン
thought
くらい
that.
知ってるよ。
And to those thinking, I wouldn't know Joe Biden, what are you talking about? I've learned not to make any assumption of knowing anything about politics, like from Japanese perspective. I met people who don't know who Trump is. It just is what it is. Politics aren't that big. And oh, sorry, go ahead.
ニュース見なくても名前は知ってるもんじゃないのあれって。
That's what I would think. But I had somebody at last. It was during when Trump's presidency. When I asked them, it was something about the news or something. I asked them if they'd heard about it, and they're like, "Who's that?" And I was just like, I was stunned.
それは違う人にあれだね。ふさわしくない人に聞いちゃったな、それは。
it'd be impossible to ask somebody who doesn't like, obviously it's America, so we're like super political. But anyways, so the culture wars in specific, I thought have become almost a unique part of American culture. Not to say that they don't happen in other locations, but kind of the power and how much it wraps up individual citizens into like given issues, I think is like super interesting, especially when I realized that I'd never heard of such a thing in Japan. So before we go into whether or not, okay, well, maybe there's some to some extent, but maybe from IME's understanding, there doesn't seem to be any. But I wanted to give you, and I already showed you some videos beforehand as prep, because I didn't expect you to be familiar with this topic, of some recent examples of some culture war issues, and to kind of get your reactions of them. So just to be clear here, this isn't my intention is not to trigger one side of the political spectrum or not, although I'm assuming everybody knows that.
批判しようとしてね、やってるわけじゃない。
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, I think people listening to this podcast know that I'm not a conservative, but with that out of the, and like that, I'm socially liberal as well. So it's not like I think that's pretty obvious at this point. But my thing isn't going to be like, oh man, the stupid conservatives. My thing is going to be more of specifically looking at this from like a researcher perspective, or like looking at this from another country's perspective. In this case, your perspective, and to get your impression of some of how different culture wars happen in the United States. And so the first issue I want to talk about, or this is something that happened recently, is this idea of like boycotting companies and like the way that people go about doing it. And so I showed you a video of, and just for context, we're talking about the Bud Light controversy, where basically a trans woman was put onto a Bud Light beer can as a promotional material. And then a lot of right-wing pundits saw this and made a big deal about this, and basically started saying that they're trying to attack the youth with trans individuals, and that's a whole separate conversation that whatever. But the more interesting part for this conversation is what was happening in retaliation, which I saw was super funny, which is people started shooting like their own, like a lot of the conservatives tended to be a big market for Bud Light. And so they would get their guns or machine guns and literally start filming themselves blowing up beer. So I mean, what was your reaction to this?
リアクションっていうか、まあ、これアメリカ人だったよね。アメリカ人。いや、バカだな。なんか、やることがね、なんか、バカっていうか、なんかいや、なんかすごいよね。なんか規模がでかいよね、やることが。なんか、すんごい、なんていうの、山積みにした、ね、ビールの缶を、ね、シュートするみたいな。で、それで、ウェイみたいな感じでさ、いや、ちょっと、バカなのかなっていうのが、まあ、印象かな。はい。
Have you ever, is there anything that you've seen or can think about that would be similar to like this kind of protesting a company in Japan?
いや、私がYouTube とかでさ、多分、なんていうのなんていうんだろうね。炎上系 YouTuber とかはさ、そういう批判とかするじゃん。だからそういうのを見てないから、あるかもしれないけど、でも、こういうのはあんまり見たことないかな。まあ、やるとしたら、カンパニーに対してプロテストしたかったら、そのカンパニーの前で、なんか紙に書いて、なんとかやめろとか、なんかそういうのやるんじゃない？
You said Enjoke YouTuber. Do you know of any examples of that? I've never heard of. I literally don't. The closest I know to Enjoke is people talking about commenters being angel, like you know what I'm saying, like fans being. But that's not like a YouTuber. I'm talking about like there's a lot of political commentary, and I listen to a lot of political commentary as well, and like almost as entertainment in the U.S. sphere. But I've never heard of anybody. I don't know of a single name, so I don't know who you'd be referring to. Do you have anybody in mind?
いや、スペシフィックネームはわかんないけど、なんか例えばYouTuber に、例えばある YouTuber とか、俳優女優が、問題を起こしますと。で、それに対して、なんか、俺はこう思う。なんでローステッドされたか、なんか干されたかとか、なんかそういう、なんか人に対して、なんか批判するみたいな感じなのが、
like commentary, like against other YouTubers.
そんな感じ。
I haven't seen that either. The most I've seen, like, but obviously I'm not really in the Japanese YouTube. I made a whole video about. I mean, maybe it wasn't obvious, but I to this day still can't find a single Japanese YouTuber whose content I enjoy. Just being honest, I just have not been able to find it. I might make at some point longer main channel video exploring this topic because I just don't. I don't know what the deal is, but all the content I watch feels the exact same. It's edited the same, the delivery is the same, the level of discussion is the same, and you know I might be cynical, but I'm just starting to think that maybe like YouTube, I don't know. It's for some reason the Japanese people are. It's more like it's all this. I don't know. There's no you in YouTube. I don't feel individuality. Anyways, that was a whole side tangent. So do you have any examples of like that? You said the angel from maybe maybe you could give a discussion about there have been some controversy with like with specific individuals getting targeted. I've heard of like a wrestler, I know, but that wasn't really like politics, right? There was like a wrestler who like committed suicide or something. I remember from getting a bunch of like, comments.
あれでしょ？テラスハウスかなんかのやつでしょ？
Yeah.
それは、あれ、なんか、なんでだったっけあれ。あ、そうだ、なんか、確か、なんか、アグリーかなんかネットに書き込まれて、で、なんか、それで、なんか、ひどい人が、死んだ方がいいみたいな、っていうのを書いて、すごく、なんか、傷つけたんだよ。で、それで、自殺しちゃったかな、確か。で、亡くなっちゃった。
And can you think of anything like that kind of pressure at the very least, that commentary towards like political figures or companies? Like I know like you know what I'm saying, a specific, whether it be the prime minister or anybody else in politics, or like I don't know, some company does something to irritate like the elderly population in Japan. Like, I know you said you looked up something related to, what was it, like an LGBT law that was being
ああ、
passed?
そうそう、
But
なんか LGBTQ も入るかわかんない。私確か忘れたけど、なんかその LGBTQ、なんだっけ、増進、LGBT 法成立みたいなのがあって、これが最近の、なんか、いつだ ?20、確か十何日かに作られて、なんか2日前ぐらい、16日だ。16日って言ってもあれだよね。まあちょっと前に、可決、成立したらしい。LGBT 理解増進法っていうのがあって、で、なんか、ここで言ってたのが、なんだっけな。なんかその全部の人がその安心した生活を送れるようにみたいなの書いてあって、で、その、なんていうのLGBT のまあ当事者たち、まあその人、そういうグループの人たちは、その全員が安心するって前提だから、その、まあマジョリティの人、LGBT じゃない人が安心できなかったら、そのうちら、その、LGBT の活動ができないんじゃないかっていう、その、なんていうの、まあ、批判ではないけど、まあ、批判か。
wait. Let me hold up. So 2 questions. Is there federal law or something?
うん、
Or is this like
国の、フェドロないもん。国。
No, kuni means federal.
あ、え
Well, I guess as in like the whole government, like the entire
whole
government, the nation, yeah, nation, national. And the other thing is, what would this be preventing them? So if the majority felt not safe, they could prohibit some action done by like the LGBT like electorate or something.
なんかパレードとか、なんかそういう、なんていうの、イベントとかがダメなんじゃないかっていうのと、あと、なんかまあ、面白い。
Wait, hold up. I want to make sure that that I'm understanding that correctly. You're saying like if there was an LGBT parade and it was considered to disrupt the peace, then the government
か
could
もしれ
legally
ないって
stop
いう、
it?
そうそう、その、もしその、普通、LGBT の人じゃない、マジョリティの人たちが、その、安心しないって言っちゃったら、まあ、どうしようもないよね。
Oh my god.
その法律でさ、すべての人が安心したなんか生活を送るみたいな感じだったから。
Oh, you're reminding me of like a conversation we had, and I'm gonna try not to get super triggered. But what I will say is that Japan has this thing where and I know America has a lot of problems and also has ambiguous rules, but Japan like gets off on making extremely ambiguous rules that have wide sweeping levels of enforcement. So something saying like yeah, go ahead.
ね、なんかアンビギュアスとか言うとね、まあ、その、私身近なことだと、その、まあ、ドレスコードがあるわけよ、そのホスピタルでね、ローテーションの。そこでさ、なんか髪の毛、例えば髪の毛で、髪色は、清潔で、なんだっけな、清潔で、人に不快感を与えない髪色にしてくださいみたいな。いや、それ人によって違う。
A color that can't, what would you say, make people sad, sort of? I don't know how to say.
違う、not disturb.
Yeah, not disturb. Yeah,
other people,
not to disturb them. There we go. A color that is not disturb, not offensive. There we go. A non-offensive color.
そう。とか、あと、なんか、アクセサリーは、カビなアクセサリーはつけない。じゃあカビじゃないアクセサリーはつけていいのみたいになるじゃん。
Yeah, but I'm totally agree with you and could rant about this, but I want to just to reset ourselves on the culture wars. I'll jump into another example. So, the other example that I'm choosing is there have been more. This is all recent. So, the conservative base tends to be very focused on like given issues at a given time, and right now that's trans or like LGBT people in general. So I guess it's similar to what you're saying in Japan. There's a store called Target, which is a big box store like Walmart,
Target,
kind of smaller in size. And
あれね、子供用だよね。
No, it's just everybody, like
あ、
clothes and
う。う
I
ん。
think they have food. I'm not sure. I don't actually have a Target where I live, but
あ、
I've
そう。
been to some before. And there's a big like rap song that was released kind of as like a political piece, because Target started selling. Well, they always do. All these companies do this during Pride Month. Do you know what Pride Month is? Like it's in June, and at the very least, the U.S. is considered Pride Month. So many
う
companies
ん。
will have like rainbow flags or rainbow clothing or rainbow icons.
へ
Have you heard
え。
of Pride Month before?
プライド、いや、あんまあるんだろうと思うよ。けど、個人的に聞いたことない。
So is it so it's not a thing in Japan then?
いや、
As
it
far as
is
you're
a
aware?
thing じゃない。なんかね、本当申し訳ないけど、ニュースあんま見ないんだよね。
No, not new. No. So, okay, here's my example. It's not something that'd be on the news. So during Pride Month,
うん。
like every corporate, anytime you walk into any building, basically, like almost any large corporation, you'll see rainbow colors, a rainbow flag.
あ、そんな大々的にはやってないと思う。けど、なんかそう、なんか、この間、4月20何日かで、なんか、渋谷とか、なんか表参道、原宿あたりで、なんか、レインボーのなんか、なんていうの、旗持って、
Pride flag.
みたい
Yeah.
な、やって、なんか、歩いてた。うん。で、それでいろんな、会社の人たち、なんか、とか大学とかの人たちが、その、列作って歩いて、なんか更新ではないけど、してた。
I mean, it might be the case that, and I wouldn't be too surprised that the notion of a Pride Month might still be just like an American thing at this point in time. Well, obviously, there's still like Pride events and other stuff going on, but I would not be surprised to hear that the Pride Month is specifically just like an American thing. But anyways, so Target, as many companies do, has clothes for like LGBTQ people, and they have them at the front of their store. And this got picked up as a culture war topic, and people were going into Target and like basically harassing employees and grabbing clothing, and being like, "What are you trying to sell to our kids? Do you think this is okay? Like, do you believe in God?" And a bunch of other stuff like that. And then eventually there was a song released, a like rap song about Target. Were you able to watch that?
なんかね、
The targeting your kids?
うん。targeting, なんか、
Their
kids.
kids, yeah. And people listen to this unironically. Like this popped off within the conservative sphere of things. And so what is your impression of this? So a bunch of people, not only is it like it's not just like people getting angry, but they actually then re-put this political culture war back into like music, I guess, and people are for enjoyment listening to I don't even know what you call it, these political inventions.
なんか
Or is there
さ、
anything that rings it? Go ahead.
アメリカのさ、ラップカルチャー全体的にさ、なんかそういうカルチャーとかさ、なんて言うんだろう。その、訴えとかなんか風刺のためにラップするじゃん。だよね。
Yeah. But the difference here would be that it's not, most of the time rap is, and like what you're talking about, those are about like larger social issues or overarching like racial issues. In this case, it's about the store Target.
だからそれと同じ感じで、ターゲットがターゲットっていいな。まあ、対象がターゲットがターゲットになってる。そう。
The thing I'm saying, and the reason I find it very funny, is because Target is not the reason. So, for example, if you're talking about like social injustice, you can point to a lot of general issues in society, and a lot of things have been pointed to, and those things to be like, whether it be like the like capitalism or like white supremacy or other things that are more overarching, and it makes sense how you can draw a line between that and whatever issue that's being talked about. But in this case, we're talking about a box store that doesn't really care. It's about, you know what I'm saying, they're a business. They just care about making money. And they're being put in this thing like they actually affect anybody, like to some relevant degree. And that's what I find funny about that. Do you have any like maybe it doesn't seem like you do, but can you think of any times where there might have been a protest against a specific business in Japan?
Specific business? What?
Like Apple, Starbucks. I've never heard of one. I'm trying to think of what that even look like.
覚えてるなんかアメリカだったっけなんかスターバ
I'm
ック
talking
ス
about
の
Japan, but go
な
ahead.
んか
Yeah.
さ、いや、そうだけどさ、アメリカのさ、なんかさ、スターバックスで氷の量が多いみたいなさ、なんかプロテストあったじゃん。
Oh, with there's too much ice? I think yeah,
そう。
no. Oh, they actually yes, exactly. They increased the amount of ice or something to
そう。
and you can't ask for no ice now or something.
いや、普通に氷
Like
少
you're
なめ
not
とか言え
or
るけど、でも
or
ね、
no, you can, but you have to pay more.
じゃあ、you have to pay more じゃなくて、氷少なめって言っても、液体の量が増えるわけじゃないんだよ、確か。
Oh, okay, that makes
だから
sense.
あんま変わんないっていうね。まあ、確かね。うん。で、まあまあ、日本だとね、そんなにクレイジーなピーポーがいないから、だってただのさ、アイスの量を減らせとかのためにデモすることはないんじゃないあんまり。うん。
I know that. So there's this idea, and I think that it is true. It's not completely false that um a lot of like the older people in Japan tend to be more conservative, and I believe in a lot of ways they would be just as ignorant, if not more, than a lot of the very ignorant base of like the US, whether it be on like the left or right side or anywhere in between. But I think maybe one of the reasons there isn't as much is just because Japan really doesn't. There's really only one party in Japan. You know what I'm saying?
まあ、いやでも一
there's a
応さ、
stranglehold over it.
一応政府はさ、与党と、まあ、与党っていうのが、まあ、政権を担ってるのが与党パーティーね。与党と、
Yeah.
あと野党っていうのが、まあ、他の、
Yeah.
クリティサイズする、パーティーズなんだけど、まあ、two parties じゃなくて、何個もパーティーズがある感じ。
Yeah, no, but in terms of the ones that actually have power and control,
は、
from what I can see, it's just
一の
one.
パーティー。そう。
Yeah.
そう
And because of that, you never really have so in America we have constant shifting
うん
back and forth and back and forth, and like roughly half the population is on one side and half the population is on the other side. I mean, technically half the population, yeah, but and because of that, I feel like that means that you have way more polarization between people, whereas one party just continually winning over and over and over again, and the youth doesn't really even have any sort of like skin in the game. And the thing is, as people grow older, on average, normally they tend to go more conservative, except for this most recent generation, that doesn't seem to be the case. So when the population's so old, to me, it feels obvious that in Japan that's already going to be skewing them towards being conservative, and the conservative party is the one that has the most, power. So I wonder what would happen if suddenly there was like a politician who was really outwardly like, hey, we need change. Like, it's ridiculous that or like the youth of Japan is get thrown under the bus to support like the majority of the population that's not going to be able to work or do anything, and we're going to have to work like 100-hour weeks and not be able to like afford like even housing or anything like that. Like, if there was somebody like that, I wonder if we'd start seeing like old people protest in Japan, and they'd start like boycotting, or I guess the equivalent of the Japanese version of taking guns and shooting beer cans would be like Japanese old dudes getting samurai swords and cutting beer cans and cutting Asahi beer cans in half.
まあ、そもそもなんかデモとかがね、そういうカルチャーがあんまり、なんて言うんだろう。まあ、ポピュラーではないから、まだなんていうの、実際に LGBTQ のなんかデモとか、あと他のデモとかもあったりしたね。だから沖縄、なんか米軍の沖縄の基地に関するデモとかも結構前あったし、
Of course, America. America is the only time anybody gets political.
違うよ。じゃあ日本人が、
Yeah, no, I know. I'm saying, but it's America. You know what I'm saying? It's about America. It's about America, though.
で、まあなんか、そういうなんかデモあるっちゃあるけど、でもアメリカほど一般的になんかそんなちっちゃいことでやることはないね。なんか。
Well, what's like the scene for political commentary in Japan? Do you have it? I know you're not into politics, but are you aware of like YouTubers, Twitch, and in the US it's huge. It's a whole thing. Like YouTubers, Twitch streamers make millions of dollars a year, like the top ones. just off of like covering news, covering or like rage bait. There's a whole term called grifting, which is very popular in my opinion on the conservative side of the like the most issues, where you have people who don't actually care about what they're saying. They don't really believe it, but they know there's a big audience for people who feel a certain way, and or they don't really feel a certain way, but they'll basically convince people that they should feel a certain way, like for example, in my opinion, the Bud Light beer thing. And then they'll rile them up and then be like, hey, this is an issue we need to care about. And then they'll be like, hey, we need to fight for justice. We need to fight for America and our rights. The way that you can do that is by buying my merchandise. And I know it sounds ridiculous, but that's literally what they do.
そういうなんかね、そういうことはね、なかなかないね。その、例えば多分、そのビッグな、YouTuber、その、まあ、
Yeah.
はじめ社長とか、ヒカキンとか、まあ、コムドット、わかんない。いるとかいろいろいるけど、そういう人が多分そういうなんかポリティカルなメッセージを送ると、それはそれでなんか炎上するよ。
I don't even think they have I mean, I would say no hate. You know what? It hurts me. Yeah, just to talk about, because I used to be a fan of Hikakin and he used to do beatboxing. And I'm not going to, no hate, but I will say that I don't know what any Japanese big YouTuber stands for. I don't know. I don't mean like even a political message. I just mean.
そういう人はさ、あれ企業からさ、そのスポンサーされて、で、その、なんていうの、商品紹介とか、あとなんかコラボ。
No, I mean like I'm talking about in my head. In my head, their identity is the same identity as even like the smallest YouTuber. Maybe this is a moment where you can feel I have strong feelings about this.
なんかなんとか系とかあるんだよ。
バダン。Yeah, you can tell I'm not a big fan of Japanese YouTube. What would you say? I'll take a quick stop again and say, hey, anybody actually have a YouTuber that you think I would like? Let me know. I talked about this a long time ago, but I still haven't found a single one. And like, you know how much I love anime. You know I'm an anime fan. And I like to believe that if I can love anime so much, that means there are people who are creative and can make good things. And I just don't know where they are on YouTube. So, anyways, back to the conversation at hand. So I was talking about the social media. Yeah, the last portion. So social media influencers, and it's something that we'll cover in our last section. What is the social media influencer vibe in Japan? And a big part of like American social media influencers is like this politics aspect as well. So whether it be like making a stand for something, or for even example for my friends, like, or not my friends, but it's common for like somebody will like there's a new version of like the gay pride flag called the progress flag, which encompasses like more individuals, more groups of people. Have you seen that before? It's called the progress flag.
Nope.
It has like, for example, it looks like a normal LGBT flag, but it has another triangle in it that's like brown, blue, what is it, brown something, black. But yeah, there's like a lot of, what would you say, like moral posturing. So like on social media, where people will show themselves participating in different events, like political events, or they'll say like I'm saying Pride Month, whatever, and have like the rainbow shirt or something like that. Is that a thing that you see in social media, or like at all? Like people wearing
なんかね、そういうね、なんかなんていう、例えばそのソーシャルメディアインフルエンサーズの中でそういう LGBTQ の人はもちろんいるし、なんかそういう人がやることはあるけど、まあマジョリティの人、まあヒカキンとか多分違うじゃん。人がそういうことやってんのはあんまないんじゃない？まあね、ヒカキンのビデオ全部見てるわけじゃないかわかんないけど。
No, I'm talking about not like YouTube, but like social media, like Instagram, Twitter. Twitter, I guess, is huge in Japan, right? So.
よしよ、なんだよな。Twitter やってないし、Instagram もなんか、そう。インフルエンサー別にフォローしてるわけじゃないからな。なんとも言えないよ。
Yeah.
まあ、
oh, go ahead.
やんないっつって。まあ少なくともそのお店でそういうバッジをつけるとかはないね。レインボーのやつ。
Yeah, I mean, so that's very different. What was it? I just had something on the top of my head that I wanted to end this section with. I'm so bummed. It was something that I think was very topical, but I can't remember what it was. But I do feel like at least one story I want to tell. is I have and just to show you about how much I think the culture of culture wars is like addicting to some people, is I have a friend of mine who is not what I would really call overtly political, but he is very chaotic. And something that he has done multiple times actually is he'll go to a lot of like when they have a lot of protests. Like I know there's one for UC Berkeley. That was a huge thing back in the day. And he went, and the first day he basically found the leader of one of the protests on one of the political sides, and then convinced them that he was like a staunch supporter of like their side, and then went into the group and then was leading a group of people and like fighting these other people inside this protest. And then the very next day he managed to convince the other group that he was actually on their side, and they were like LARPing with like these like what was it, like a shield and like a sword, and like fighting people in this protest. And he managed to successfully basically be with both leaders and like one day, and then the next day went to another. And he did this for no discernible reason. He just likes like the conflict, and I feel like that kind of embodies American culture.
すごいね。
Like, literally both sides. He's like, whatever, dude. I just want to fight.
あれか、そのコンフリクトが好きで、なんか入って意味ないこと、なんていうの。
Dude, it's hard to read. This is what I have a lot of like friends who I would definitely be considered, I think, weird in some ways, and that is one of mine. It's like a dude he's not a nice dude, but then he just like, yeah, I just came back from like the UC Berkeley, and I was like, it was crazy, like on both sides. Like one day I was fighting on one side, and I was like, you know, I'm gonna switch it up and see if I can go to the other, and then he just well, yeah, it's yeah, you know, you can't really say it's like the most like admirable thing to do, but it is at least an interesting story. But yeah. 戻りました。今回あいみの話ではなく、私のポケモンの話をしよう。
No!
そこまで悪いことなの。
Everyone is ね、あやみファンだから。
そう、あいみのブックタイムと、ムービータイムがないってどういうこと？じゃあ、コメントで、炎上してる人、ぜひコメントしてください。今回は、中途してる人の一人が、ポケモンを使って日本語を学びたいと思ってるから、そういうなんか、オレンジアイランズというポケモン、あいみは知らないけど、
オレンジアイランズ。
オレンジアイランズはなんか、一番流行ってた時、私のなんか子供の時のポケモンって感じ。子供の時というか、その私の時代じゃなく、その前の時代のアッシュとビスティとブロック。日本語だと何でしたっけ？主人公はサトシ。で、ミスティはオレンジ色の髪をしてる人。で、ブロックは茶色。知ってるかな
？I don't know. I'm the last person you want to ask that question.
とりあえず、そのポケモンの中でロケット団、ティームロケットという、あいみにさっき教えたんだけど、そのティームロケットはポケモンの悪役。で、有名なマロがある。その、I'll perform it for you now. I mean, this is なんか毎シーンで、英語のバージョンだとこういうことにある。So it goes,prepare for trouble, make it double, to protect the world from devastation, to unite all peoples within our nation, to denounce the evils of truth and love, to extend our reach to the stars above. Jesse, James, Team Rocket, blast off at the speed of light, surrender now or prepare to fight. And then Meowth comes in, he's this cat, he goes, Meowth, that's right. So that's the English version. And I learned that ごめんね、日本語。英語になっちゃった。その日本語のバージョンは全然違くて、そのもちろんポケモンを見ていた、それとも今見てる人たち、ポッドキャストの中で、ぜひぜひ日本語のバージョン調べてください。あいみは全然見たことないというか、聞いたことないと思うんだけど、これから日本語のバージョンを歌うというか。
私がやった方がいいの？Should I do that?
あいみ全然聞いたことないから。私一応聞いたことあるから。
I can read Japanese. I don't know.
いや、読んでるの問題じゃなくて、その雰囲気的に。
Okay, whatever.
まあ、じゃあ、ぜひぜひ、あいみ、やってください。
ねえねえ。何
演じてください。武蔵は女性で、小次郎は男性。
Okay. Yeah, so Musashi goes, what the... なんだかんだと聞かれたらで、
答えてあげるのが世の情け。
はい。世界の破壊を防ぐため
世界の平和を守るため。
愛と真実の悪を貫く
ラブリーチャーミな敵役。
武蔵
小次郎。
銀河をかけるロケット団の二人には
ホワイトホール白い明日が待ってるぜ。
にゃんてにゃ。
にゃんてにゃ。
にゃんてにゃ。かわいい。
こういうこと聞いたことないでしょ。
何にもわかんない。
こういう英語になっちゃった意味は。
Oh yeah, I was speaking English.
いやでも大丈夫。まあとりあえずこういうなんか日本語になんか日本語のバージョンはすごく分かりにくいづらいと思った。そのホワイトホール、その Surrender now, prepare to fight のところ、英語のバージョンだと、日本語だとホワイトホール白い明日が待ってるぜ。で、ホワイトホールは何だと思って、そのヤフー何でしたっけ、知恵袋
black hole, the opposite of black.
あゆみを知ってるんだ。
What?
知ってるんだ。
So the black hole is like the hole which like absorbs everything, and then white hole is like the hole to nani? How do you say like the opposite of like?
いや、こういう表現聞いたことない。でもそう、あゆみは合ってる。そのブラックホールのなんていうか、他の側、その放出してるところ。
そう放出。
How do you say it in English? 放出してるところ。I've never heard of the term white hole before in my life.
I mean
so
like
I thought they were
like
talking about
that's
white
hole,
hole.
like 放出する。
The what's it called? Shooting. There's like the sucking. What's it called? Did you say the part of the black hole that draws thinking stuff in, and then there's like the what's it called? On the other side of the singularity point of a black hole, it shoots all the like matter out, and like there's like a white stream of light. Yeah. まあそういうことは white hole と it's not a hole though, it's a line. You know what I'm saying? It's an infinite line. It makes no sense.
Whatever.
でしょ？まあとりあえずそのホワイトホール白い明日が待ってるぜはなんていうか豪華な未来が私たちをなんか待ってるという意味。でもなんかホワイトホールはそういう意味で使われてるのかと思って、なんか日本人もその知恵袋でこれはどういう意味と書いた。それ私も同じこと思った。なんかちょっとなんか美的すぎる、詩的すぎるというか。
I just think they wanted to use the word white, and then after that white hole がなんか something 白い明日。
いや、白い明日が待ってるぜ。
like 白 and white like it's the same word, so they wanted to use that in the song.
最初のところもそのなんだかんだと聞かれたら答えてあげるのが世の情けってどういう意味？答えてあげるのが世の情けって、The pities of the world. So, その多分日本語のバージョンは難しすぎて言ってることはわからないと思ってる人、英語の日本語の翻訳をこれから読む。So, if you ask, this is the Japanese version, but English translated. So, if you ask us this or that, the pity of the world is what responds. To prevent the destruction of the world, to protect the peace of the world, to stand by the evils of love and truth, the lovely, charming villains, Musashi, Kojiro. The pair from the Team Rocket soars to the galaxy. A white hole, a white tomorrow awaits us. Then Meowth says something like that. Ma.
Yeah, that's completely different. Like for like Disney movies, they do have the same meaning. Like mostly. But this time it's
全然違う。
Yeah.
その日本語のバージョンを説明しなくちゃいけなかったけど、こういうなんかまあ意味についてそのホワイトホールとか、私が持ってたホワイトホールはホワイトホール、なんか結婚式 なんか大体同じ意味にたどり着いたけど、私が持ってたのはなんか素晴らしい豪華なホワイトホール、like white hall が私たちを待ってると思った私。なんか白い明日とか、it's a bright future. Halls H-A-L-L.
Yeah, I know like this time. White hall.
でも同じ意味なの？そのホワイトホール。同じ、そのホールとホールは同じ。でも日本語だと同じ？
ホールはね。
ホール？そう、ホールはホール。まあ、まあ、というと、まあ、今回の、たわいもない話でした。And we're back with the final section. And if you made it to the final section, that means you send an email to lazyfluency@gmail.com. In this episode, we have apparently the most controversial subject that we've ever had before, which is sugars, because 3 separate people all commented about this small comment that Oddity made last week.
なんかよくさ、普通に生活してるこんな細かいことも知ってんね。調べたんかわかんないけどさ。知ってるかこんな。
I'll say I'm completely out of my depths. I have no clue what the consensus is here. Like I can read the words, I can understand the words, but guys, I don't know anything about sugar. But I'll read your guys' comments. We have 3 different comments all on the topic of sugar. I don't know if this will resolve our sugar problems that we seem to be having here, but maybe it will. So we'll go by the first 2 responses and then let Oddity have the last word here because he was the sugar conversation starter. So this is from South Coast Inventors. Fiber, carbohydrate, and sugar are all sugars consisting of variable chain length, or simple sugars, known as monomers, or single-unit sugar molecules such as glucose. This discussion around sugars, though, only really happens as a consequence of the obesity epidemic, and to a lesser extent around diabetics of both types. It is also easier to sell products if a set product is able to nullify the negative effect of eating too much simple sugar. I think the end practical solutions are what we should seek out if we think this problem is so great. Next, Shockox. It was mentioned already, but I would separate carbs and sugars as well. Not in the way that dumb influencer folks do, but carbs being the broken down and usable substance in the body, and sugars being the specific chemical bonds that we call sugars. All of the oses, sucrose, fructose, lactose, and losses, sucralose, allulose, not all oses, and especially the loses, can be broken down into carbs, but can be used to sweeten and are technically sugars. If you're intolerant to lactose, it ceases to act as a carb and just acts as a diuretic. Also, I had a convo with some food scientists and they introduced me to galactose, my favorite of the sugars. Unfortunately, it has nothing to do with the galaxy and is just a building block for lactose. And then finally, Oddity. To clarify the sugar carbs thing, since I saw in the comments people having feelings about it, there's that basic nutrient classification pyramid: carbohydrates, fats, proteins, vitamins, right? At least in Israel, many people think simple carbs like glucose are fundamentally different from complex carbs like grains, rice, bread, and they're a whole other nutrient group. I guess because complex carbs are not always sweet or something. Okay, guys. I mean, did that make any sense to you? Like, I can read the words, monomers.
モノマーとかわかるよ、全部。
Okay. Are people agreeing? Are they disagreeing right here? You know what? I just.
いや、なんかね、そんな、細かくは勉強してないけど、なんか、まあ、単糖か多糖かによってちょっと分解され方は違うけど、まあでも結局そっから、なんか、なんだっけ、まあ回路があって、なんだっけ、忘れちゃったけど、まあ回路があってそっから、まあアセチルコエっていう、まあ、物質を作ってから、まあ、だんだん ATP を作っていくわけですよ。
ATP. I know ATP. I do know ATP. That's as a runner, I know ATP.
まあ、ATP は、まあ、人間でいう、エネルギーの、まあ、お金みたいな感じね。そうそうそう。
Yeah.
で、
there was always a discussion. Oh, go ahead.
そう。まあだから、分解して ATP を作るっていうことを考えれば、モノマーでも、なんだっけ、ポリマーでも、まあ同じなんじゃねって思うけど、そっから、まあどうなんだろうね。なんか、フルクトースは、なんかね、確か、糖尿病の人にね、あんまり良くないみたいな聞くんだよね。
Oh yeah, I have seen a whole video on
そう。
fructose specifically.
なんでか
And
は
I
よく
think
知らない。そ
I think what was it? It was I can't remember. There's a whole thing about high fructose syrup and not. And I thought that it actually
う。うん。
basically the science was saying that it wasn't actually an issue, or there was nothing clearly saying that was bad. But I'd have to like rewatch. I remember seeing a whole video about like you always hear these discussions about high fructose corn syrup, and from what I
corn
understand,
syrup
I
ね。
don't think
うーん。
yeah. But what I will
Corn-
say is, guys, this is me trying to remember things off the top of my head about a subject that, if I'm being honest, I'm not that really passionate about. So I'm not trying to ship some what's it called, some, or sell any corn syrup products or anything like that. I just thought it was hilarious how apparently I thought it was I didn't really think much about the nutrients comment, but then everybody's like, no, time to talk about some microbiology. I'm like, guys, I don't know anything about microbiology. I mean, I think I took maybe
でもす
covered
ごい
that
ね。
in
なんで
a
さ、
biology
モ
class
ノ
I
マ
did
ーと
take.
かさ、知ってるんだろう。面白いね。
Well, if I had to take a guess, so here's my guess, guys. For Shawkox and South Coast inventors, I'm guessing that I know Shawkox is into exercise and stuff like that, and it's common for people to look up nutrients and things like that. I would guess that maybe South Coast inventors is in a similar camp. For me, I've
Yeah.
always just done sports for so long, and I've never really been trying to max or min max or anything. It's just like about the specific sport I'm training for, and I just figure out what I have to do, but it's not really, I'm never really too concerned about my diet, but
バ
I'm
イオ
also
ロジー
never
今
had
習ってたとかじゃないのこれ。まあ、バイオロジーでやるんだけどさ、これ。
well, I mean, the only thing I remember, I mean, I think you cover maybe to some extent, I'm not sure, but the only reason I know ATP, I remember the whole discussion about
うん、そうだ
whether
よ。
it was truly, I'm saying in track, whether it was truly optimal to not warm up, because technically any energy that you're wasting, like you wouldn't have. And then I was like, but then it was this whole thing like, well, no, just because you have energy, like doesn't mean like you're like, it's kind of like physics. Like at the same thing, if you warm up none at all, you just have a chance of injuring yourself in the race. And it doesn't really matter how much theoretical ATP you have if your muscles aren't ready to engage. And there's a whole thing. And then, yeah, I don't even remember what the consensus was, but that's why I remember ATP. But yeah, hopefully we resolved. I don't know if we resolved anything. Guys, tell me if we resolved this issue. I don't know what the conclusion is. Something about food pyramid. Anyways, I do. You guys had so many good comments and I wanted to cover more honestly about different topics. But I feel like Oddity has a follow-up comment about the cultural assimilation and her experience with it as a non-native English speaker. So I thought it was a very interesting perspective. And yeah, I will read it now. So as an immigrant, I had no choice but to assimilate because I didn't have English to fall back on. On top of that, the trend back then was very much the concept of the melting pot, which states immigrants must completely disregard their previous cultural identity. They even wanted to change my name. Despite all that, I don't see why you'd immigrate to a whole other country if you're not interested in interacting with its culture, which language is a huge part of. Choosing not to learn the local language is alienating yourself from your environment, but in a much deeper, more philosophical sense. It's more than isolation. It's giving up on a whole other perspective through which you can interact with the world and understand it. Shawcox also said something similar, but I find this perspective interesting because she had to go through the experience of being culturally assimilated. I know we talked about our thoughts before, but I mean, what is your reaction to this?
名前を変えるってそのまあファミリーネームも変えるってことかな。
It could be both.
どっち
I
も
mean,
か。
you've technically done this, right?
そうそう、なんかまあ I'm not gonna mention my family name だけど。
Yeah, but your first name.
あ、そうそう。first name?
Yeah, your first name. That's technically this is your.
はいはいはい。なんか私ね、その公式じゃないんだけど、まあ、あやみは普通の名前ね。で、の他になんか、一応なんか台湾ニーズネームもあるっちゃあるんだけど、なんか別にそれ全然公式じゃないよ。なんか、勝手につけられてるんだけど、使ったこともないし、ただ、家族まあ家族っつっても、私のお父さんとかに呼ばれるときに、なんかたまに聞くぐらい。 から、全然、
Yeah.
あれなんだけどね。で、あと、これもね、なんか、多くの人、例えば、まあ、韓国とか中国とかから日本に、まあ、移住みたいなするときに、なんか、名字を少し変えるとか、あともう全体的に変えて、日本の名字っぽくするっていうのが、まあ、帰化って言うんだよね。帰るに、科学の科か
Isn't
な。
doesn't kika also mean like what is like subordinates? Or am I miss? Oh, maybe
あ
that's a
るんだ
different
よ。
kanji.
確か帰化がね、多分その感じだったかな。うん。まあ、要するに日本っぽい名字にするっていうのがあって、例えば、なんて言うんだろう。漢字を一個追加して、大体さ、あっちの人ってさ、漢字一文字とかが多いんだよ。でそれを漢字一文字追加して、なんかそれっぽくしたりとか、あと、例えば、なんか韓国かなんかでさ、なんだっけ、リーと、あ、違うわ。木の、木って書いて、その下に下って書くのね。だか
Mhm.
ら、なんかそれを日本人に名前変えるときに木下ってなんかしたりとか、木下さんすべてが韓国人ってわけじゃないけどね。なんかそうやって
木下はねでしょ。
んえ
木下は
いや、
ね。
ちぎよ。
つまり。
名字で、なんかそういう、
Yeah.
日本っぽく名前を変えるっていうことが結構あるらしい。そう。
So, what is your take? Because I'll give my take first, and then I'll ask you. In my opinion, and maybe maybe this is like too close-minded, and we
う
should
ん。
be open about the Japan of the future. But in my opinion, I think it is kind of ridiculous, or what would you say, too immersion breaking for non-East Asians to like change their names to kanji names. So imagine if I like went to Japan and I officially changed my name to like Kojiro
嫌だ。
with like the kanji, or like Joey but like with like kanji.
嫌だ。
And I know some people, foreigners, do this and like, yeah, it's awesome, dude. I can't. I just think it's ridiculous. I just think it's ridiculous. It looks. I'm like, bro, look at me. I'm not a Kojiro. And I'm not I'm a katakana
That's
Joe.
an
You know what I'm saying?
ugly name.
Yeah. Well, what are your thoughts about, like I said, like let's say Americans, like, and by Americans I mean let's say non-East Asian Americans, or what I'm saying, white
あ、
Americans, like
どういう
Hispanics,
こと
some
だ
Hispanic dude, like African American, like getting like kanji, like kanjifying their name completely when moving to Japan,
そもそもね、あれなんでそういう人
or
いな
or
い
or getting a
し、
new name, or
あれだ、
becoming like,
カ
or
タカナ
becoming
になる
like
だ
a.
けでそういう人は。日本
No,
で。
but no, I know, but there are people. I've so there was this was, I think, when I talked about a long time, something called Nihon Toa, or Nihonjin Toa, a documentary that I mentioned before, where
あ、
there's
はい
one
はいはい
guy
はい
who's
はい
just a British dude,
う
this
ん。
most British dude, like he's just a British dude. He moved, I think, and he just moved to Japan, and he lived there for about 15 years,
う
and
ん。
he's just officially changed his name to a completely separate Japanese name. And I actually know somebody locally who has I mean, he's a nice dude, he's an interesting dude,
う
but
ん。
he like gave himself a completely different Japanese first name and last name, and I just think it's cringe, but I haven't told him. But I won't say it.
それ自分の名前に基づいてる、なんか似たような名前なの？それ
No,
と
no,
も
no, no,
勝手
no,
に
no,
なん
no.
か好
It's
きな名前をつけただけなの？それは。
well, I think both actually. It's
あ、
both.
そう。
Is one of
う
them's
ん。
made up and the other one's based off one of his
うん。
names, and he put like the
OK。
Japanese sounds
あ、
for it.
まあまあまあ、that makes sense。うん。
But do you think like what I'm saying? Okay, what if I said it's like I'm like, I introduce myself. I'm like, Joy と申します. And then and they're like, Joy はどうやって書くの? I'm like, oh, it's actually what is it?
大丈夫の
情勢
上に。
の情。
あ、女
大
性の
丈夫の情。大丈夫の情に威力のい。
やだな。なんかちょっとクリンジーな感じがする。
Is it because of the kanji I chose, or is it just in general?
うん、なんかそうじゃなくてカタカナにしろよって感じになっちゃうかもしれない。
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So that's my hot take for my hot take for the day, guys. Let me know what you think. Also, the carb discussion. Have we solved this carb discussion? Like, what's going? Are we cool? Are we on the same page? I don't know what page this is.
I don't know. We
Yeah.
have to see.
Yeah, just
look at the 論文たち。論文を読まないとダメですよ。
Yeah.
これは
Yeah. But yeah, thanks for the comments. That bell means we reached the end of today's episode. Thanks for joining us, another lazy conversation towards fluency. If you have any language-related questions and are just looking for general advice, send an email to lazyfluency@gmail.com, and we might respond in the next episode. Also, make sure to check out our podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and more. We'd appreciate the support. This has been Joey.
And glucosayami.
Signing off. じゃあねー。
じゃあねー。